Hello, welcome everybody to Americans for Truth Live. I'm Pete LaBarbera here with my friend Mike Heath, and we are on our quest to fight the politically correct baloney that's all over America, everywhere you go. And we have some great video for you today. I'm in Virginia, and yesterday I learned that I was looking out the window. I'm sitting in a car in Virginia, and I was looking the wrong way from the camera yesterday, so Mike told me try to look at the camera, which I'll do today. Hope I can pull that off. But anyways, we've got a lot to talk about. Before I do anything, let me talk a little bit about Virginia. I used to live here. Hope to live here again if I can flee, if I can somehow escape the People's Republic of Illinois. And they've got this incredible scandal with the governor who did blackface, and then the lieutenant governor who had a sex scandal. There's a Me Too scandal with him, and then now the attorney general says he also did blackface. And so it's a mess, and they're all Democrats, and the Democrats have, they don't know what to do, because if all three of those people resigned, there would be a Republican in charge, and the Democrats don't want to let that happen. But here's the thing. I was on a show a couple weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, on VCY with my friend Jim Schneider, VCY America. And a woman called up, and sometimes the callers have much more wisdom than the hosts or even the people being interviewed. And I think in that case, this one was true, because this woman just said matter-of-factly, if blackface is wrong, basically dressing up and putting on, trying to, sort of mock, this goes way back, sort of belittling black people with putting on the blackface. If blackface is wrong, then isn't it also wrong for men to dress up as women? In other words, drag queens, right? What are drag queens? They offer up these pathetic caricatures of women. They're mostly homosexual men. I think Jared's pulling up RuPaul's Drag Race. RuPaul is the most famous drag queen. And I believe his actual name, he was born RuPaul Andre Charles. But drag queens are quote unquote gay men who dress up as women. They mock women. There's a long history of it in the homosexual movement. Drag shows, now it's gained popularity, and thanks to people like RuPaul, it's even leading to kids wanting to embrace this lifestyle. But why isn't this wrong? The left has such a hypocritical history. There's no common sense. There's no order to it all. It's basically whatever serves their intersectional purposes. And intersectionality, in case you're not aware of it, is sort of the leftist ideology, leftist playbook now of uniting all the groups, these supposedly oppressed groups, against the oppressor. And guess who the oppressor is? It's white men. Okay. Women, minorities, they throw in LGBTQ. In other words, they create a new quote minority based on homosexuality and transgenderism. And all those minorities, some are genuine, some aren't. I mean, I don't think minorities are based on sexual perversion, but the Democrats do, and they all unite against the oppressor, which would be white males, and that's how the Democrats hope to win the election. But if it's wrong to mock black people, and I believe it's wrong, I believe racism is sin, just as homosexuality is a sin, homosexual behavior, then isn't it also wrong for grown men to offer up these vicious caricatures of women, and they're way over the top, and that's the humor of it? Why is that okay? Well, here's my prediction. The left won't condemn drag queens because that's part of their LGBTQ interest group. We're talking identity politics here. That's part of the Democratic Progressive Coalition. And so they'll look the other way on that one. Now, there are some exceptions. You'll note that the transgender movement, with this unbelievably insane idea that men and boys can become women and girls, we now see radical lesbians aligning with Christian pro-family activists because they both agree that it's wrong for biological boys to compete in girls' sporting competitions. And then there are these naturally stronger biological males who are posing, pretending to be girls or women, are winning these competitions. And so you see this alliance coming down the pike of lesbians and conservatives, pro-family conservatives, because they both agree that this is this is harmful to women. And so now we see the leftists, the leftist alliance, the leftist coalition sort of imploding in a way because they're at war with themselves. The transgender men, the so-called trans women, these are biological men, including drag queens and others who are pretending to be women, are at war with elements of the lesbian movement, and it's crazy. But I just wanted to say, let's watch out and see what happens when we raise this issue of drag queens, and whether that is wrong. I mean, these men posing as women. Show some of those pictures, Jared, on the RuPaul's Drag Race. By the way, the RuPaul's Drag Race is named for, in the homosexual, the so-called gay movement in the cities, there would be these drag queen races, and it would be these men dressed as women in stilettos and high heels, and they would have a race. I've never gone to one. I've never seen one. I've never seen RuPaul's Drag Race, and I don't really want to see it, but I'll probably have to watch it. But they would have these races down the street, as I understand it, and it would be a big contest. And it's all a big joke. But who's the object of the humor? Women. They're mocking women. And this is just another facet of the gay movement. And yet they're allowed to mock women, but white people aren't allowed to mock black people. And I believe it's good that it's a bad thing. It is truly, there's a long history of Jim Crow and there's a past of racism in this country. It's slavery, of course, which we are overcoming. I believe we've made a lot of progress in that. But I do believe you should be able to forgive when people do things that are wrong. But where is the left on men posing as women, mocking them as drag queens? So that's one thing there. But I want to go back to the State of the Union. Jared, pull up the first clip. We talked a little bit about this, Mike, but I think this is really momentous. It was Reagan-esque when Trump came out against America as saying America will never be a socialist country. Play the clip, Jared.
Well, the ongoing struggle between socialism and capitalism rearing its ugly head again last night at the State of the Union. President Trump making a dramatic vow.
America was founded on liberty and independence, and not government coercion, domination, and control. We are born free, and we will stay free. Tonight, we renew our resolve that America will never be a socialist country.
Mike, isn't that fantastic? I mean, we need politicians to talk like that.
Well, I'm glad he said it. I want to believe him, and I'll choose to at this point. But you know what I mean when I think about politicians in Washington, D.C. keeping their promises. And one of the problems here is the church. For America at this point in our struggle, where we're so evenly divided, and where one of only two major political parties has given into socialism and seems to be headed toward hardcore communism, if you look at the cultural Marxism side of the debate within the Democratic Party. At this point, I mean, where is the institutional force that's going to help Donald Trump keep that promise? And the only force in the society that has institutional power sufficient is, I think, the church. It's Christianity properly understood.
Yeah, and Mike, and we both know that in order for the homosexual movement to accomplish its goals, It needs big government. The homosexual movement, the so-called gay movement, now the transgender movement, in order to transform society, and we quoted the gay activist, said it's all about changing society. It wasn't about gay marriage. It was, for them, so-called, but it was really about changing society. In order to do that, they need big government. And we're seeing that with these, I think the greatest example currently are these bans on so-called conversion therapy and for minors. In other words, you have a boy, let's take the worst case scenario. The boy was molested by a homosexual predator, like Don Lemon. Pull up Don Lemon, the host of CNN, Jared. Don Lemon, very radical, very anti-Trump. A lot of conservatives can't stand him, but Don Lemon was molested as a child. He had a very unfortunate circumstance growing up. His mother was in an adulterous affair with a businessman, and she would sleep in the business. They had sort of a arrangement where she would go sleep with the guy in his office or somewhere where they would have their rendezvous. And imagine this is this kid growing up, Don Lemon. He gets molested by an older young man, I think, when he was a boy. Now he's a gay hero, right? That's to the left. He is an LGBTQ icon. Now, let's say things were different, and somebody like Don Lemon as a boy, the parents said, okay, just because you were the victim of a predator, of a homosexual predator, we don't want you to think that you're gay. I'm with Kevin Hart. I don't think any parent wants their child to embrace an aberrant, deviant sexual or gender identity. I just don't. They can fib about it later and say, oh, everything's great, but no parent wants that. And so let's say the parent of somebody like Don Lemon as a boy who was a victim of a homosexual predator says, I'm going to take you to a therapist to help you, to say that, because think about it. If your first sexual experience is molestation at the hands of a sexually deviant adult, imagine the effect that has on you. Of course, it has a profound effect, and that's why I believe there's a proportion, an actual large proportion, especially of out and proud gay men, adults, who have some sort of early sexualization, predatory child molestation experience when they're younger. And so you're the parent, you say, I don't want this for my son. I'm going to take him to the therapist and get help. And the therapist is going to help him to see that heterosexuality is his natural, should be his natural course in life. Well, in several states now, thanks to homosexual activists, that cannot be done. You cannot take them to a therapist, cannot take your son to a therapist who would be against homosexuality, or they call it conversion, try to convert him to a heterosexual identity. And so we have real life consequences to this legislation, and it takes big government. It takes big government to dictate lifestyles. And of course, the parents should have the right to help their child pursue what they need to pursue. Or there are young men who struggle with homosexual temptation. They don't want to be gay, quote unquote, and they want to live according to their Christian beliefs, and they might want help. And this whole movement, you watch, after they ban it for children, they're going to want to ban it for adults. I believe they've already gone that way in California. They want to completely wipe out any ex-gay, pro-heterosexual therapy, and they'll move on to counselors at church who are helping people overcome homosexuality. This is a movement which has a neo-totalitarian streak, Mike, and they need big government to accomplish it. They need socialism.
Well, what they need to do, the left, in order to hold on to and continue to gain power, political power, is they must destroy the idea of family. And when I say that, what I mean is what we all think of as family, which is mom, dad, and the kids, and the grandchildren, and maybe even the great grandchildren. That's what a family. That's what a family is. Period.
Right.
It isn't anything.
Yeah. And Mike, I said in my talk at Gone Too Far, which is why I'm down here, the Gone Too Far press conference. I mean, this is a revolutionary movement that redefines everything, right, Mike? I mean, they redefine hate, they redefine love, they redefine family, they redefine marriage. It is a revolutionary movement which sweeps up it's all consuming. It takes all the institutions. And so now they say, well, family can be, everything. And if they've already redefined family to include, say, two dads, intentionally denying a mom at the home, well, then how can they stop at, say, two dads and a mom, or maybe three dads and two moms? How can they stop when they've already blown past the natural barriers that God established for what a family is?
Well, they can do it, Peter, as long as we let them. And when I say that, what I mean is specifically you and me and whoever's listening to us. Now, at this point, the show's very new, so there's very few people listening to us. But the distribution cost for information, perspective, for thinking, for reason has never been lower than now in human history. The distribution costs for truth has never been lower than now in all of human history. So if they win, if they hold on to power as a result of controlling the mainstream media and controlling the expensive ways that information is distributed, then it will be our fault, because the internet has given us the opportunity to win this battle. The internet has given us the opportunity to win this battle. And I can prove it, Peter, because what's the biggest issue on the internet right now? Censorship.
Right.
Why? Who's being censored?
Right. Christians are being censored, and that's why we're here, Mike. And I love that we have the freedom to talk about what we want to talk about in the way we want to talk about it, because the idea that social conservatives especially can just succumb and just tolerate this blatant censorship of ideas is preposterous. Freedom cannot survive if we don't make our case. And Jared, I want you to pull up the second clip of Trump talking about late-term abortions. I love this. I mean, Trump, we talked about it yesterday. I don't want to go into it too much, Mike, but I want people to see this again, because and then I want to play the Democratic response by Stacey Abrams. Here we go. This is Trump talking about banning late-term abortions.
There could be no greater contrast to the beautiful image of a mother holding her infant child than the chilling displays our nation saw in recent days. Lawmakers in New York cheered with delight upon the passage of legislation that would allow a baby to be ripped from the mother's womb moments from birth. These are living, feeling, beautiful babies who will never get the chance to share their love and their dreams with the world. And then we had the case of the governor of Virginia, where he stated he would execute a baby after birth. To defend the dignity of every person, I am asking Congress to pass legislation to prohibit the late-term abortion of children who can feel pain in the mother's womb.
Okay, that's good, Jared. Now here's what I want to say about this, Mike, and I also want to get your thoughts. We're talking about, notice the Democrats, and those are mainly, that's the mostly House members, female Democrats right there, not standing, not applauding for Trump, which is a very common sense move of banning late-term abortions. We're talking about babies who are viable, who can live. Now, the left is now straining to defend this. They're saying, oh, these are extreme cases. But let's remember, we already know that a lot of Downs babies, I have a Down syndrome, a brother with Downs. A lot of Downs babies are murdered in the womb because they're not perfect. You can amniocentesis tests, which can find that. I don't believe it's always accurate. By the way, my mom, God rest her soul, my mom never, when she found out, she was refused to take the amniocentesis test. In other words, there was not going to be an option to abort her child because my mom was a Catholic and did not even believe in that. But note the Democrats. Now you have Nancy Pelosi has criticized Trump for saying this, but Now our show, we focus on homosexuality. What's interesting in this whole debate is that the homosexual activists partner with the abortion advocates. Human Rights Campaign lists abortion votes in its scorecard, at least they used to. Its congressional scorecard. And so we have movements which are, Mike, you talked about the natural family. What could be more against the natural family than murdering children? And God bless Trump for taking this fight public. And I know it was painful to see that he didn't mention the LGBTQ agenda at all. And I believe that's the weakest part of Trump on social issues, is he has basically kowtowed to the Supreme Court's imposition of so-called gay marriage. And that's a problem. And we have to help him raise it. And if he doesn't raise it, we have to raise it ourselves. But Mike, the pro-aborts are in league with the revolution, which is LGBTQ. And remember, it's not a civil rights reform movement. It is a radical sexual deviant sex revolution. Of course, they're all in bed together because they're all at war with God and at war with nature.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And let me just say about Trump's rhetoric that this is some of the strongest rhetoric that I've ever heard from a president in such a prominent moment, the State of the Union speech. He used some extraordinarily strong language there, and very clear language on the issue of abortion. And I think we talked about this yesterday. I think this is really going to paint the Democrats into a corner that they're not going to be able to get out of during the election.
I agree with you. And what we have to do as a movement is somehow raise the profile of LGBTQ issues. And I think you can start with the radical transgender agenda. If we're going to play defense, we're going to lose on that. I don't have the numbers, but I would suspect that there is more money and power behind just the transgender movement alone, Mike, the T in the LGBT. There's more money. I'll have to research this, but I'm sure there's more money behind that than the entire pro-family conservative movement spends, or, on fighting the LGBTQ agenda, which is really, really sad. Mike, and we've got to help Trump. Trump went in after the election and he said, gay marriage, that issue's been decided by the Supreme Court. I'm paraphrasing. That was a very sad moment because I believe Trump understands how to break media power. We have to remember, especially if you're young, if you're under 30, you can't even imagine what media was like in this country. Mike, we remember. There were 3 networks, and they were all liberal, and that's pretty much how people got their news. 3 TV networks. There wasn't a Washington Times. There was a Washington Post and a New York Times. All the media were liberal, pretty much, except maybe the Wall Street Journal. The media had much greater concentration of liberal power. Now it's spread out, and there are many more conservative voices. But Mike, let's face it, when it comes to this particular issue, the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, so-called queer agenda, a lot of conservatives don't even want to touch it because the rest of the media has done such a good job in propagandizing for the gay cause.
Well, I think in that old paradigm, when the ability to communicate with millions of people was so expensive, liberalism was different than it is today. Liberalism today, CNN, for example, is partisan. CNN is Fox News is partisan. The big media, so that's different than it was 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So any movement that wanted to get its message out developed strategies to try to influence these big players because they were the gateway. Well, that's all changed. And what's interesting is, as that has changed because of the internet, these big players are attracting much smaller audiences than they ever have, and they're becoming much more ferocious in their partisanship.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Okay, now, Mike, we're going to run out of time, and I want to get to this. Jared, could you pull up the video of Pastor Stefan Broden from the Gone Too Far? Oh, I'm sorry, quickly. Play the Stacey Abrams clip. This is the Democratic response. Note what she says about abortion.
And call racism what it is, wrong. America achieved a measure of reproductive justice in Roe v. Wade, But we must never forget it is immoral to allow politicians to harm women and families to advance a political agenda. We
Okay.
affirmed marriage equality.
Oh, I'm sorry. Keep playing, Jared.
And yet the LGBTQ community remains under attack. So even as
Okay, stop it there. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I cut that off, Jared. I'm sorry.
Why
She
can
said we affirm marriage equality.
Why can the left bring those two things together, but the Republicans can't? Why can the Democrats?
Well, because the left knows that the media and the Republicans and the conservatives are running scared on the gay issue, and so. But Mike, I wanted to focus on what's amazing about the left is how evil their propaganda is. Here's a black woman talking about associating Roe v. Wade with, quote, reproductive justice. Now you have innocent, defenseless, unborn children in the womb being slaughtered systematically through abortion. And somehow this fits in as a justice issue to the left. Moreover, you have African American babies are disproportionately murdered through abortion on demand. And here's an African American woman justifying and relabeling abortion as reproductive justice. Now, Mike, I think a lot of people and increasingly, I think a number of black Americans, you have websites like blackgenocide.com who are getting it, that the Planned Parenthood agenda has for a long time, been helping, quote unquote, to abort black children. I mean, but the idea that this is social justice, give me a break, but this is the sort of propaganda that, I mean, it rivals the Soviet propaganda of the 50s, 60s, and 70s. I mean, this is calling the murder of innocent, defenseless babies reproductive justice is pure evil.
Yeah, well, this is neither reproductive nor is it justice, which is typical of the left over the last 50 years because they got it from Marxism. It's all about dividing people so you can gain power. Getting people to fight amongst themselves so you can gain power. And how do you do that? Well, you take words, reproductive. Abortion has nothing to do with reproduction. Reproduction is when you reproduce something. Reproductive. And then justice. Abortion has nothing to do with justice. We're talking about a human being that's innocent in what should be the safest place on earth for them, for a human being, which is the womb of their mother. It has nothing to do with justice. It has nothing to do with justice, has nothing to do with reproductive. You take the two words, you sandwich them together, and you create a whole new definition for something that doesn't exist. Doesn't even exist.
Yeah, it's George Orwell. And then you ask how they lop it in. Well, they lop it in using the same tactics. Marriage equality. Two guys cannot make a marriage. Two guys cannot produce a child. Neither can two women. They have to resort to heterosexuality, which, by the way, long ago in the 70s and past that, gay activists and they used to call heterosexuals breeders. Again, they were mocking heterosexuality, but now you see this term marriage equality. It's not equal. It's not marriage. I mean, whatever it is, and whether the Supreme Court calls it marriage or not is immaterial. Before the God that we love, this is not marriage and it's not equal. And I mean, I've got here a book, Mike, and we'll be talking about this, and we actually offer these through our website. This is a book by Mass Resistance called The Health Hazards of Homosexuality. I mean, if you want actual factual evidence just demonstrating how homosexual behavior is not equal to natural heterosexuality, it's everywhere. All you got to do is Google CDC, Centers for Disease Control, plug in HIV, plug in MSM, which stands for men who have sex with men. Pull up, there's reams and reams of information by the government, even produced by the government agencies, showing how unequal it is. And yet what is that phrase? I mean, we have high rates of syphilis now. Syphilis is making a comeback as a disease, predominantly thanks to men who have sex with men. And so equality is a farce. Marriage equality, Mike, it's just like you said on abortion, it's neither.
Right. And we're at the bottom of the hour. I don't know how far do you want to go?
Well, let's go ahead and take it out, Mike. And I want to thank everybody for watching again, and we will see you tomorrow.
So please go to americansfortruth.com, americansfortruth.com. There's a blue donate link on the right, donate link. We don't get any money from the government. We don't get any money from big grants and all that sort of thing. And the issue is way too controversial for that. It's up to we the people, it's up to you to help us keep the truth going out every day at americansfortruth.com.
Yes, and don't forget to sign up for our newsletter. And thank you all again. Remember, it's not our truth, it's God's truth, and it's our duty as Christians to defend it. See you tomorrow.